Part 1. Acknowledgements. Many have offered support and assistance to help this book reach publication. We want to acknowledge our two soul sisters. One is Pam Worthington Lash, who read the manuscript numerous times and asked excellent questions that prompted us to keep improving it. The other is Suzanne Thibodeau, who provided insights and extensive moral support along the way. We acknowledge the significant contributions of clients and students who either requested the Afterlife Healing Circle or sat in on one and then shared their stories in these pages. Thank you. We also thank those who told us their stories of communicating with the other side and allowed us to include them in this book. Such deeply personal sharing takes courage and generosity. We are grateful to our agent, John White, for his tireless efforts on our behalf, and to Raymond Moody, MD, who told us about John and then crafted a lyrical foreword for this book. To know that our work touched one of the pioneers of the afterlife movement means a great deal to us. Fellow author Mark Ireland deserves our thanks for his efforts to support us, too. He helped bring about a vastly improved manuscript that is the basis for this book. We also wish to thank Terry Daniel for making sure we connected with Dr. Moody. We want to acknowledge and thank our unseen mentors and colleagues of the Sunan Society and our own groups of spirit guides. They are indeed part of that wider community we define and discuss in this book and have been with us every step of the way, even throughout many years of discouragement. They never gave up on us, and that helped us keep going. This book is one of the fruits of our collaboration. Foreword by Raymond Moody, MD. All over the world, and from prehistoric times, human beings have attempted to contact the spirits of their loved ones lost to death. Modern mediumship, we are told, dates from the 19th century, but that is a mere factoid or a kind of urban myth. In reality, for more than 10,000 years, people have known of various methods for carrying on active relationships with their deceased relatives. A loving relationship with a person doesn't stop when that individual dies, and that has been true throughout human history. The Afterlife Healing Circle describes an exciting rediscovery and updating of ancient shamanic modalities for communicating with the spirit world and making it manifest in the physical world. The book is replete with fascinating case histories and personal experiential accounts of life-changing spiritual encounters. Reading the Afterlife Healing Circle reminded me again of a remarkable cultural and historical fact about spiritual experiences. People living in advanced Western societies frequently have profound episodes of spiritual consciousness. Similar episodes are well known, named, and categorized in various non-Western lands and tribal societies, yet knowledge of such kinds of experiences is not culturally transmitted in the Western world. In other words, certain kinds of spiritual experiential formats or potentialities are somehow built into the human mind. And such experiences will occur to people regardless of whether that particular kind of experience is acknowledged and catalogued in those people's cultural traditions or not. For instance, in China, there is an ancient, well-established tradition of what are known as birth dreams. Pregnant Chinese mothers often communicate through dreams with the yet-to-be-born individuals they are carrying in their wombs. In China, this is all acknowledged, understood, and appreciated. Yet the same thing happens among Americans as well, as a poignant story in this book illustrates, despite the cultural void that surrounds the phenomenon in the United States. To me, this is an astonishing fact about human nature. There is a universal format, as it were, of spiritual experiences deeply embedded in us all that transcends particular human cultures. The Afterlife Healing Circle touches on this and many other important, unexplored domains of human consciousness. As this book shows, unleashing such hidden spiritual powers can greatly benefit the living and perhaps bring balance to the dead. Raymond Moody, MD, is a psychiatrist and author of the international best-selling book Life After Life about the near-death experience, a term he coined. His pioneering research into the question of life after death helped legitimize the subject. In the 1970s, he and a small group of fellow researchers formed the International Association for Near-Death Studies (IANDS), which continues today as one aspect of the worldwide study of the case for post-mortem existence. Introduction. What kind of world would we inhabit if we were not so terrified of death? If we could meet our children and know their lives' purposes and at least some of their emotional and spiritual needs before they were born. Imagine greater freedom from fear. Imagine parents being better prepared and wiser stewards of young lives. If the preceding seems unobtainable, please read this book. It is possible because it has happened. We, the authors of this book, have witnessed the Afterlife Healing Circle alleviating decades of unresolved grief. We also have first-hand knowledge of the way the Afterlife Healing Circle can ease the fears of expectant parents. This book recounts some of the stories of those involved. There is no greater joy than to help someone move from pain and despair to hope and resolution. It has been our privilege throughout many years to assist in making this happen, and we wrote this book to help anyone who desires to do the same. Most books about the afterlife fall into one of several groupings. Some recount scientific research into the survival of consciousness after the physical body's death, while others relate the personal near-death experiences of credentialed experts. Other such books reveal how an ordinary person or child died, glimpsed the other side, and returned to tell about it. The fourth type of afterlife tome is written by mediums or psychics who discuss their experiences contacting souls on behalf of their clients. This book does not fall into any of these categories. Instead, it is a how-to manual with enough context to explain the why to, when to, and where to. You need not be an expert or medium, or even think of yourself as specially gifted in any way, to conduct or participate in the Afterlife Healing Circle. The desire to help someone else or to heal your own pain, along with some practice in the intuition tapping approaches we provide in this book, go a long way. You do not make this journey alone. The Afterlife Healing Circle brings together informal groups of family, friends, and neighbors who assist and support those in need of healing. Filled with tears, laughter, and, frequently, surprises, the Afterlife Healing Circle is one of the most profound spiritual gifts we can give each other, and ourselves. The true impact of the Afterlife Healing Circle is the experience of the other side that it provides to participants. That distinguishes it from a reading by a medium or from books about scientific experiments concerning the afterlife. What also sets it apart is its use for contacting souls before the birth of the physical body, not just after its demise. It's possible to contact souls regardless of whether or not they inhabit bodies we perceive as physical. We do this often in our work as Sunan therapists. The Afterlife Healing Circle is a grassroots spiritual practice with enormous potential to bring about inner peace. The simple method outlined in these pages equips ordinary people to find their own answers to life's deepest questions without relying on authorities or experts. That in itself is a world-changing proposition. Ours is not an organized movement with an agenda or overarching goals. Instead, we hope that by publishing a book that teaches anyone how to conduct the Afterlife Healing Circle, we will help foster a jubilant inner shift in awareness as more of us experience and embrace the reality of love and consciousness as a continuum, whether expressed in this world or any other. Chapter 1. Ever watch The Changeling? There's a corker of a scene in this movie. A medium ostensibly in a trance state supposedly does automatic writing. Thunder booms, the wind howls, the shutters bang open and shut, the lights flicker on and off, a huge chandelier swings ominously above the woman and other participants in the event. It's meant to be dramatic, but the effect is laughable. It's just a lot of hoopla and weird goings-on. Right now readers may be wondering, what does this scene have to do with the Afterlife Healing Circle? It's about a seance. Our answer is nothing, and yet a lot. The big screen drama has precious little to do with what actually happens during the Afterlife Healing Circle as we practice it, or with any of the legitimate reasons for conducting one in the first place. But whether we like it or not, our use of the Afterlife Healing Circle has been known more commonly as the seance, even if the two are as different as day and night. We wrote this book to explain how and why our version of the Afterlife Healing Circle is a powerful grassroots spiritual tool and nothing at all like the seance, its much better known step-sibling. In the next chapter we will look briefly at how the circle has been associated with healing in the sacred, from ancient times to the present and in multiple societies across the world. We are not new in using the circle as a healing tool, but we are advocating an approach that brings all of self to the circle and thus makes a type of communication possible in ways not generally associated with the more prevalent uses of the healing circle. To succeed, we must shatter the seance stereotype that was born out of ignorance and prejudice against the emotional and spiritual, intuitive parts of self. Derided by some, prescribed by others, the seance is, tragically, degenerate fodder for sideshows. One such spectacle was witnessed in Las Vegas a number of years ago by paranormal author and lecturer Ken Hudnall. Ken, a prolific author who hosts an online radio program called The Ken Hudnall Show, was in Sin City doing a ghost tour that ended with a seance. He was suspicious from the outset because he was not allowed to inspect the room prior to the event. To up the drama factor, the stages included elements of voodoo and Santeria among the séance rituals with which Ken is very familiar. There were chicken bones in motion, a tambourine playing, and objects on the table that appeared to be moving by themselves. It's easy to spot collusion, Ken says, because usually somebody in the audience is a shill. But on this occasion, he could not figure it out, and remains puzzled to this day. At the end of the séance, he explains, the lights go out, the medium begins to scream, there's a big bang, and the girl beside me jumps into my lap, Ken recalls. When the lights come on, I'm holding the girl and the medium has vanished. Everybody was absolutely fascinated, and I'm looking for the trick. Trickery and the séance have gone hand in hand too often, such as a séance in Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan, in the 1940s that was intended to be sham. Two college students who were amateur magicians and known locally as séance debunkers received $100 to stage a fake séance in an affluent woman's home. On the appointed night, the event appeared to go off without a hitch. There were eerie sounds, and a likeness of the dead husband of one of the guests appeared out of a mist to answer her questions. Afterward, the student who led the séance wandered into the kitchen and found his partner pounding on the back door. This second student, who was to work the apparatus to generate the special effects, had been locked outside throughout the entire evening and had been unable to play his backstage role. Point 1 Unnerving, isn't it? Especially for those who are convinced the whole séance proposition and, by extension, the afterlife healing circle is always phony. Those students' experience in the bizarre has been shared by countless others. People often dabble in the séance as a casual pastime with no more apparent significance or meaning than a game. It begins as a lark or a joke to alleviate boredom, to enliven a party gone flat, or to satisfy idle curiosity by seeing if something or someone really is out there. This casual approach is begging for problems if not downright disaster. Unaware of what they're really getting into, many people make well-meaning attempts at spirit communication. They try table tipping or Ouija boards, which may be sold as games but are not toys. A young woman we'll call Tammy Jenkins found this out the hard way. Scared and bewildered, Tammy, who declined to provide her full name, phoned us one day, desperate for reassurance. She also wanted an explanation for the chilling and bizarre event she had just experienced. She and a friend had decided to use a Ouija board to contact her late grandfather. Things went fine at first. The pointer, moving under their hands, spelled out the nickname her grandfather had always called her. Then it stopped. Something changed. The pointer moved again but haphazardly, as though whoever or whatever was propelling it didn't recognize Tammy or her friend. It tried to spell out a word that appeared to be help, then spun around and around in wild circles. At that instant both young women experienced a nasty feeling in their stomachs. Their eyes blurred, and Tammy recalled actually dozing off for a brief period. After they ended the session, all the tapes on top of the VCR fell sideways and spilled onto the floor. No one was anywhere close to the tapes when they fell. Tammy's unnerving tale of her experiences with the Ouija board incidents is by no means unusual. A visitor on the Yahoo.com Answers website tells about dabbling with the Ouija board at a slumber party in the 6th grade. Immediately after the kids asked about the entity that responded to their summons, all of the faucets in the bathroom turned on. No one could have entered the bathroom without being noticed because it opened only to the bedroom. It was pretty scary. The poster writes. Point 2 The séance is probably the most misunderstood and thus abused and debased of all spiritual practices. The very word immediately brings to mind what most of us consider the unreal and therefore absurd notion of conjuring up spirits. The séance stereotype certainly was the foundation for that outrageous scene in The Changeling, and a much more recent séance-related movie even has that word in the title, The Conjuring. Skeptics' view of the séance can be summed up by Brian Dunning, who writes the Skeptoid blog. Contacting the dead has never passed any kind of controlled test, has no plausible theory, and is a fraud committed upon susceptible consumers. He asserts. Point 3 Members of some religious communities share the same attitude, although for different reasons. Texas resident Jean M. Perdue cited Ecclesiastes 9:5-6 in the Bible as her caution against contacting the dead. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing at all, nor do they have any more reward, because all memory of them is forgotten. Also, their love and their hate and their jealousy have already perished, and they no longer have any share in what is done under the sun. The S word also evokes a good deal of fear. Trying to contact the departed through via boards, seances, etc. is one of the most dangerous things anyone can do, warns Phyllis Sloan, PhD, an author and spiritual science minister based in Maryland. It is playing Russian roulette trying to contact spirits. God does not like it and the punishment is severe, for we all have our own understanding about what God does or does not like or allow. And we, the authors, would argue that negative events are more about experiencing the consequences of our beliefs and actions than about divine punishment. We agree, however, that there certainly has been a great deal of fraud involving seances in recent decades, if not centuries. We also are well aware of the potential for hazards. The good news is these dangers can be avoided, and one reason this book exists is to teach readers how to do just that. Here's the bottom line: the Afterlife Healing Circle is simply one means by which those in physical bodies may communicate with those who are not, meaning those who are on the other side. It makes no difference whether those who do not have physical bodies are considered dead or not yet born. We use what we call the Afterlife Healing Circle to experience the reality of being, life, as a continuum, after physical death and before physical birth. Personal experience then enables us to decide for ourselves, rather than take someone else's word for it, what we believe about the possibility of multiple lives and what transpires before birth and after death. We need to experience this for ourselves because that is the most engaging and compelling way we learn and grow. A Chinese proverb sums this up best. It states, "Tell me and I'll forget. Show me and I may remember. Involve me and I will understand." Only direct personal experience enables us to even begin to comprehend a subject that seems at first unfathomable or bizarre. Conducted correctly, our version of the Afterlife Healing Circle is one of the most powerful spiritual and emotional experiences available to anyone in a group setting. Moreover, learning to conduct the Afterlife Healing Circle and participating in it is grassroots spirituality at its purest, under the direction of those involved, acting as their own connections to spirit and not relying on intermediaries' interpretations or dogmas. Knowing for ourselves more about what happens after the physical body dies, or before it is born, is empowering and freeing in ways too numerous to count or even understand without having had the actual experience. So, if conducting a séance can and does lead to trouble, why do it at all, even under a different label? That's a valid and pertinent question. Indeed, Phyllis Sloan, the minister and author who states she is also a psychic and clairvoyant, advises that the best route is simply to pray for information from God about those not in physical bodies. Spirits at this plane are evil, she says, and they impersonate those who may be heroes of those who hear them. I have been in this field as well as psychotherapy for over 40 years and I cannot tell you how many people have run into serious trouble with contacting spirits. Some have never recovered. They become what medicine calls schizophrenic. 5. We respect her concerns because they are valid. We certainly agree that prayer is beneficial, which is why we do it daily in our own ways. But we have been conducting and taking part in our version of the Afterlife Healing Circle for decades with no adverse effects for ourselves or those who also participate. The properly conducted Afterlife Healing Circle involves no danger, as this book will explain and demonstrate. Moreover, we often need resolution that we cannot find or obtain through more conventional means, such as prayer, meditation, or counseling. In Chapter 3, we will introduce you to a woman we refer to as Clara Jones to maintain her privacy. For 20 years she tried both psychiatry and psychotherapy. They were very helpful for her but, in the end, both were simply too limited in approach or understanding to address the one issue that was still eating away at her. After all of her treatment and hard work on self, she still yearned for emotional and spiritual resolution with her dead mother. This longing is universal. Astrid Stromberg, PhD, says callers to her Brilliant Essence radio show who mention departed loved ones invariably have unresolved issues concerning their deaths. Usually people start out by saying, "Are they okay?" explains Stromberg, an inspirational speaker. But what they really want to say is, do they still feel my love? Do they still feel the connection? Do they still see me live? Do they still know how I feel? Do they know how their experience of them dying was felt by me and the ones who lost them? 6. In other words, when someone we love and care about dies, we experience a profound and painful disconnection and loss, and we cannot help but long to reverse it or at least alleviate it. The problem, for Clara and many others, is that traditional psychotherapy provides little to no help in relieving grief, and unresolved grief can cause significant mental and emotional distress. 7 A similar emotional and spiritual crisis can result from an unwanted or poorly timed pregnancy. That was the issue of another woman we will tell you about named Deborah Wild, a pseudonym to protect her privacy. She needed emotional and spiritual support to resolve her fear and self-doubt. Parents-to-be Mark and Rondi H, their last name abbreviated for privacy, also required something that no doctor or pregnancy counselor, however expert and well-intentioned, could give them. They needed to feel reassured and confident in their hearts and souls, not just know in their heads, that the pregnancy and birth were going to be fine. Part of the issue is simply that traditional psychotherapy, grounded in behavioral and cognitive sciences, is too limited to admit the possibility of life beyond the physical, whether it's after death or before birth. Science speaks to and satisfies the mental part of our being, but offers nothing to fill or even acknowledge the very different needs of the emotional and spiritual parts of self. This half of self knows and senses that the physical is not the only reality, and its legitimate needs deserve as much respect and support as the mental part's interest in science. The Afterlife Healing Circle speaks to all of self, not just one or two parts. Brianna Henderson Saucy is an intuitive counselor and teacher who helps clients access their ancestors and ancestral knowing. Very familiar with circles, she says, a circle gives you a safe place where you can feel your pain, you can feel your disorientation, you can feel your grief, and it's grounded and protected so you can feel these things and not be devoured by them, not be incapacitated by them. 8 Precisely. Within the circle it is safe to vent one's grief and anguish, surrounded by loving support. But beyond providing a safe place in which to express pain, the circle as we practice it can help launch or accelerate healing, too. Healing, which we will define in greater detail in Chapter 2, is the purpose of the circle. It heals, in part, by providing uniquely personal answers to those questions that Astrid outlines. This approach also heals by respecting and then restoring or establishing an emotional and spiritual connection to the beloved departed or the not yet born. The Afterlife Healing Circle cannot, however, substitute for a deeper exploration of unresolved matters between the living and souls on the other side, the dead and the not yet born. This is one of the Afterlife Healing Circle's limitations. It is not the same as therapy, and therefore is not an appropriate place to explore very sensitive issues, such as sexual abuse, that are best addressed in a private setting with either a traditional or alternative therapist or counselor. Nor can the Afterlife Healing Circle function as an experiment or provide objective proof of anything. It offers only an entirely subjective experience and should be employed and regarded as such. There is nothing dangerous or negative about subjectivity, provided we do not insist that our subjective experiences determine the reality or lives of others. The power of the Afterlife Healing Circle is directly related to the presence of love, the most subjective factor of all. Love helps heal a lot of the pain caused by the separation that we soulmate. This is a part of Zindagi Ki Roshni consultancy. It has been established for those who have lost someone and for those who are very sad in their life. About 100 PDF books and 20 short audio books of this topic will be sent to those who join it. This data will be sent to their email or WhatsApp. If you want to join this organization, then please send WhatsApp message to this number.